No one would argue we're in hard times when it comes to finances. It's tough to budget with the cost of keeping a roof over your head, food in your belly, and bills to pay. That's why Senator Kim Pate sponsored Bill S-233, which proposes the development of a national framework for guaranteed livable basic income. It's currently being studied by the Senate Finance Committee. If passed, it would require Canada's finance minister to develop a national framework for implementing a guaranteed livable basic income program. Senator Kim Pate joins us now. Welcome, Senator.
Thank you. It's wonderful to join you from here on the shores of the Kitchissippi in the unceded, unsurrendered territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe.
What exactly is a guaranteed livable income, and how is it different from welfare?
So one of the big reasons that I introduced a bill to talk about this is to say we should have the discussion about what kind of model we should look at. So first of all, that's what the bill does. It doesn't actually say we'll have a guaranteed livable income, even though personally I would like to start there. But what we're talking about is basically an income that goes out to folks when they need it, whether it's because they're sick, because they can't work, because they're wanting to train to get a better job or to go to school. And that it doesn't have the same moralistic approach that social assistance does right now, or welfare, where you have to prove that you're entitled to it, you have to prove that you deserve it, you have to test every piece. It's basically saying that if you're under a certain income, then you should be entitled to have these resources. We know that everywhere that it has been tried, it has both saved money and allowed people to rebound out of poverty. And so we're also talking about livable. So when I say guaranteed livable, I mean not what social assistance is right now, because in every province and territory in this country, the amount of money provided on social assistance is not livable. You can't survive on it. And so it makes everybody what I call infinitely criminalizable, that people are doing things that if they were monitored, if they were followed, if they were prosecuted, could end up criminalized for, and that's wrong. That's really, shows the stigma and the attitudes that basically are about being against poor people. And what we know from Dr. Zhao, who testified at the Senate committee about Bill S-233, is that when you actually provide money to people who are living in poverty, guess what? They spend it in their communities. They pay rent, they buy food, they clothe themselves, they maybe get stuff for their kids. But contrary to the myths and the stereotypes that are out there, predominantly, held by people with money, quite frankly, who have never been, in a situation where they're poor or struggling to make ends meet, is that somehow if you give money to poor people, that they'll waste it. And what her research shows that, in fact, when you provide more resources, enough for people to live on, two main things happen. People get housed, they get fed, and they get out of poverty faster, they get out of homelessness faster, and they're less likely to spend money on things like drugs and alcohol.
How much would a program like this cost?
All right. So it depends on the model, and the parliamentary budget officer also testified and said that the net cost, so after taking into account the savings for other services, and this is not including long-term, would probably cost about $3 billion. The overall price tag is closer to 70 or 75 billion. But when you take into account, things like what is spent now on social assistance, what is spent on some of the other types of approaches that could be looked at, then you could actually reduce the cost. And then what the parliamentary budget officer also said is what they didn't do is look at the long-term cost savings that undoubtedly there would be. We saw in the Mincome project in Manitoba that there were cost savings in terms of the criminal system, the prison system, the healthcare system, because people were eating better, they had a standard of living that was better, they were less likely to get sick, and they were less likely to use emergency rooms. And so we know that down the line, this type of approach not just makes sense in terms of being better for people, taking care of people better, but makes fiscal sense. It's financially more viable and actually leaves people in a better place than our current systems and costs less.
But that same program that was in Dolphin, Manitoba in the 70s. It was scrapped in 79, largely due to economic turmoil. That meant more families needed it. How does something like that not happen again on a larger scale where it's discontinued all of a sudden?
Well, that's one of the reasons that many of the advocates that we've consulted with have suggested that we roll out some initiatives in a few places in this country, not just one. And that much like Medicare, the way Medicare started, where first Saskatchewan started doing it, and once people started to see the benefits, even though, yes, there were costs to it, the longer term benefits people signed on to, and nobody wanted to cut it once they started to see the benefits. In this case, that when you start with a small group and only do it incrementally, which is what we've already done really in Canada with the Canada Child Benefit, with a guaranteed income supplement for seniors, and now we're going to have a disability benefit. And the obvious question is, why are we still leaving some people out? And you know, the BC group that looked at this, as well as in Quebec, they said, let's let's essentially do it incrementally. Let's target certain groups. And that has a certain appeal until you realize, okay, who does that leave out? Well, guess what? It leaves out a lot of Indigenous people. It leaves out a lot of people who are struggling right now on social assistance.
Miigwech for that. Thank you, Senator Pate.
Miigwech, thank you to you too. And thanks for all your work at APTN, all of you.